The shelter was closing in 10 minutes when a U.S. Marine stopped dead in front of a cage. The sign taped to the wire was scrawled in angry red letters, "Aggressive, do not approach inside." A powerful German shepherd growled, his teeth flashing under the dim, unforgiving light. "That one's dangerous, sir." The staff warned quickly, "He's being put down tomorrow." But the Marine didn't move. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a single, crumpled dollar bill, and said quietly, "I'll take him." Everyone froze for $1? "Sir, he could kill you." The Marine smiled faintly, "or he could save me." 3 months later, that same dangerous dog would do something no one could believe. Something that proved heroes don't always wear uniforms. Some just wear fur and scars. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The shelter smelled sharply of disinfectant and despair. A place where second chances were rare, perhaps impossible. Sergeant Ryan Cooper, a recently retired U.S. Marine, walked through the narrow aisles, his boots echoing softly. He wasn't looking for a dog. Not really. He was just searching for something he couldn't name. That's when he saw him. A German shepherd. Massive, scarred, his eyes sharp, but heartbreakingly full of pain. The tag on his cage read one word in bold red letters: aggressive. Beneath it, a handwritten note: euthanization scheduled. Tomorrow. Ryan crouched, slowly meeting the dog's gaze. For a brief second, the animal went perfectly still. No growling, no barking, just a quiet, haunted recognition. "You've seen things too, haven't you?" Ryan whispered. A staff worker shook her head. "He's hopeless, sir. We've tried everything." Ryan stood tall. "I'll take him." The woman blinked. "Sir, he's not for sale." Ryan pulled the crumpled dollar bill from his wallet and placed it deliberately on the counter. "He is now." Everyone in the shelter stared as the Marine signed the papers. They didn't understand why he'd risk it, but Ryan did. Sometimes, broken souls recognize each other, and only one chance is enough to change everything. The first night was chaos. The moment Ryan opened the kennel door, the dog lunged, teeth bared, growling so deep it vibrated in the air. Ryan didn't flinch. He'd faced worse in combat zones. "Easy, boy," he said calmly, holding his ground. The shepherd's name tag read Shadow. Fitting, Ryan thought. Both of them carried a darkness they couldn't escape. The shelter staff had warned him. He bites. He's unpredictable. He's not safe. But Ryan believed aggression was never born. It was taught. Somewhere in that anger, there was fear. And he'd seen enough soldiers hide pain behind anger to know exactly what that meant. The first few days were rough. Shadow wouldn't eat. He barked at every noise, every movement. When Ryan tried to touch him, he'd retreat to the corner, trembling. But Ryan never raised his voice. Every night, Ryan sat quietly on the floor beside Shadow's crate, reading aloud from his old field journal, stories of courage, loss, and survival. Slowly, the growling softened. Shadow would glance at him, eyes unsure but curious. Ryan smiled faintly. "It's okay, soldier," he whispered. "You're safe now." And for the first time, the dog didn't look away. Weeks passed, and progress was slow. Every small victory felt like a battlefield won. Ryan learned to move gently, to never corner Shadow, to let him come on his own terms. Trust wasn't something that could be forced. It had to be earned. On mornings Ryan trained in the yard, Shadow would watch from the porch, tense but curious. One day, Ryan deliberately dropped his glove. To his surprise, Shadow trotted over, picked it up, and placed it beside him. Ryan froze, then smiled. "Good boy." It was the first moment of peace between them. Brief, but real. That night, Ryan dreamed of his last mission. The explosion, the chaos, the deafening silence that followed. He woke in a cold sweat, breathing hard. Shadow was there, sitting beside the bed, quietly watching. The dog nudged his hand, resting his head on Ryan's knee. Ryan's throat tightened. "You've got ghosts too, huh?" he whispered. From that day on, something changed. The distance began to fade. Shadow followed him on walks, sat at his feet, and even wagged his tail for the first time. Two wounded warriors. One man, one dog. Both fighting their way back to trust, finding healing in the quiet company of each other's scars. It happened on an ordinary morning. The kind that changes everything without warning. Ryan was out jogging through the field behind his farmhouse, Shadow trotting a few paces ahead. The sun was just breaking through the clouds when a sudden rustle came from the tall grass. Before Ryan could react, a rattlesnake struck from the brush. He heard the hiss, the snap, and then saw Shadow leap between them. The snake's fangs sank into the dog's leg. Shadow yelped but didn't retreat. He stood his ground, growling fiercely until the danger was gone. Ryan dropped to his knees. "No, no, no! Stay with me, buddy!" He tore off his shirt, wrapping it around Shadow's leg to slow the venom. He carried him for nearly a mile, sprinting toward his truck, heart pounding, shouting for help. At the emergency vet, they said the odds were low. The venom was strong. The bite was deep. Ryan refused to leave his side. For 2 nights, he slept on the cold floor beside Shadow's cage, whispering, "You saved me once. Don't stop now." On the 3rd morning, a faint thump echoed, a wagging tail. Shadow had made it. That day, the dog once labeled aggressive proved what he truly was. Loyal beyond fear, brave beyond reason. When Shadow finally returned home, he was different. Calmer, gentler, as if the brush with death had stripped away the walls he'd built. Ryan noticed something else, too. Whenever Shadow heard loud noises or saw someone in a uniform, he'd freeze, ears back, tail tucked low. One afternoon, Ryan decided to dig into the dog's past. He contacted the shelter and requested the original records. What he discovered left him speechless. Shadow wasn't just any stray. He was a retired military K-9, discharged after his handler was killed in action overseas. The trauma had left him unstable, aggressive, and fearful of everyone. Ryan stared at the documents, his chest tightening. "You're one of us," he whispered. Suddenly, everything made perfect sense. The discipline, the reactions, the haunted look in his eyes. That night, he knelt beside Shadow, placing his hand on the dog's head. "You didn't fail, soldier," he said softly. "You just needed someone to bring you home." Shadow licked his hand gently. No growl, no fearful eye. In that quiet moment, Ryan realized he hadn't rescued a dog at all. He had brought back a brother in arms who had been waiting for someone to finally understand his pain. 3 months after the day he bought Shadow for a single $1, Ryan stood in his backyard watching the sunset paint the sky in amber light. Shadow lay beside him, head resting on Ryan's boot. Calm, loyal, completely unrecognizable from the snarling dog he once was. That evening, Ryan opened a letter from the shelter. It read, "We heard what you did. No one ever thought that dog could be saved." He smiled faintly and looked down at Shadow. "You didn't need saving," he said softly. "You just needed someone to believe." As the wind rustled the grass, Shadow lifted his head and pressed it gently against Ryan's leg. And in that quiet moment, the Marine realized something powerful. He hadn't just saved Shadow's life. Shadow had saved his.